Video, we're going to take a look at WordPress and specifically what WordPress is and how you can use WordPress to create content and create your website. WordPress is what is referred to as a content management system, often commonly shorthanded to CMS. What a content management system aims to do is to take all of the work that we've been doing all along in writing HTML and CSS from scratch and make some of that reusable and repurposable. So in WordPress, WordPress will take HTML files that have what is called PHP. It is a server-side computer language embedded in specific places within the HTML. And that PHP will grab content from a backend database where the content is stored and populate those areas of the HTML page and then serve that to the browser. What this means is that you can put together a theme or a template-based system within WordPress, and then every page or post that you create will automatically populate within that theme and maintain a nice clean aesthetic. So basically your content persists, and as you move along, if you decide to change themes to update to a different aesthetic, maybe from the one that we're using now for our class to something like 2020, which is the current default theme for WordPress, all of your content will come along and all of your structure will come along in terms of information architecture, but the aesthetic will be radically changed. So let's look at how to get started with WordPress. So I'm going to start out by going to my Plus login here. I'm going to go to the domain that I have WordPress installed on, and I am going to log in. So from here, we come into the WordPress admin, and this is this basic dashboard here is kind of like a high-level overview of various things about your site. But there's a couple things that I want you to do before we start to create content. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to Plugins, and we're going to select Add New. From here, we're going to select the editor, Classic Editor plugin. We'll install that, and we'll activate it. What this is going to do is it's going to use a more classic WordPress approach. They have a new interface for creating your content, but this is going to allow us to just write straight HTML and CSS within our pages. Now that we've got the classic editor set up, we are also going to add another new plugin called Jetpack. And Jetpack requires a WordPress.com account. And WordPress.com is different than what you have configured here in your own hosting. WordPress.com is hosted on WordPress servers. So if you install Jetpack and set up a WordPress.com account, you'll unlock a lot of different features that exist within there. I'm not going to set that up right now, but if you get that set up, I'll have a future video on the things that Jetpack will do for you. So now that we have those set up, let's look at how we create content. So first and foremost, we have two primary types of content within WordPress. We have posts and we have pages. Posts you could think about as timely information, blog posts, articles, event announcements, things like that. And pages you could think of as evergreen content, things that you want to live on your site for a long period of time. Your home page, your about page, etc. So let's get started by creating a sample page and see what that looks like. So I'm hovering over pages in the left-hand side, and I'm going to go to Add New. From there, that's going to take me to this interface. And we're going to give this a title. We'll say My New Page. And the field that is in here, the title that you give that page, that's going to generate an H1 for each page that you create. Down in this area, we have two tabs. We have Visual, which is supposed to be sort of like a WYSIWYG, but it doesn't quite work that way. And we have Text. Now we're going to work with the Text tab, because in the Text tab, you can write HTML. So let's put a little bit of content in here. We'll say, put a paragraph tag in, to say this is my first paragraph. We'll close that. And you know what? Let's give this a class too. So we'll say class equals body p. Then we're going to upload an image. So we're going to click Add Media, and that's going to open our media library. Currently, I don't have any images in here, so I'm going to upload one from my computer. Now you can drag and drop files onto here, or you can use like a file picker. Now notice that the maximum upload size is 8 megabytes. 8 megabytes is enormous for a web page. Your photo should really be no larger than 200K, and even then that's quite big. So let's pick a photo. I'm going to just find something on my desktop. I've got this very large photo of my son playing guitar. I'm going to add that in here. And once that's uploaded, I have these fields over here where I can give this alt text, Evan playing guitar. We can give it a caption, we can give it a description, we can set some alignments, so we can either align it in all the way to the left, the center, the right, or just wherever it wants to go. We can choose to link to an individual page that will just display that image. We can choose to link to a different page, like if you wanted to have an icon that linked you to your contact page or something like that, or you can link to a custom URL that's outside of your site. We also have options here to display different sizes. So I'm going to pick medium. And now that I have this in here, I'm going to click Insert into Page. And it generates this image tag. It gives me the source for where that image lives. It gives the alt tag that I put into that alt field. And then it also gives me the width and the height that were in the sizes drop down, and a couple of CSS classes that kind of reflect the alignment and sizing that I asked for. So now that I have that in there, I've got a title, I've got a paragraph, and I've got an image. I'm going to add one more class to this. I'm going to say body-img. And now at this point I can either A, save it and publish it later. I can preview it to see what it looks like. And there it is. There's the content that I put in. Or I can publish it and make it live. So let's do that. So now I have this page on my site. And let's go to the site and check it out. Okay, so now you'll notice that this is the page that we're on. We also have a new nav item up here, My New Page, and then this is a sample page that comes with WordPress. So I have two nav items within my navigation. WordPress is currently set up to automatically add new pages to my top level navigation. We're going to look at how to change that shortly. So alongside pages, we also have posts. So let's look at posts. I'm going to select Add New. We'll create a new post. I'll give it a title of I Have Opinions. And then in the text, we'll say p tag class equals body-p. I feel certain ways about issues. So from here, same options. We can save the draft for later, to come back later. We could preview it, or we could publish it. But there's some new things here in posts that we did not have in pages. We have categories and we have tags. Categories and tags exist as an additional way for you to aggregate content within WordPress. Using tags, if this was about a particular topic, let's say bike safety or something like that, and I had other posts that I had written about that were also related to bike safety, I could tag that with bike safety, and then if somebody were to visit the tag, a link to this tag in the post, if I chose to display those, they would come to a list of all of the different posts that I had made about bike safety. Now this is really good for SEO, and this is really good for aggregating content about a specific kind of micro topic, or if you want to tag content with different tags, you can kind of group it with different semi-related posts. Categories is like another level up from that in terms of content aggregation. So default is uncategorized, but we could very easily add a new category. I could just call this cycling. So cycling would be the category that I use for it, and then bike safety would be a little bit more micro aggregation of that content. So now that I have a category and now that I have bike safety saved, we're going to go ahead and publish this too. Okay, so let's go back to the home page for my WordPress site. So now you'll see that my new page is in my nav up at the top. There's a link to that. If I go back to the home page, I have a list of my posts. So that one I just made, I have opinions, and then this automatically generated post that comes with WordPress, Hello World. And again, the default here is for WordPress to just list your posts in order on the homepage. But that's not exactly what we want. So let's go ahead and make some changes here. You'll also notice under these posts that we've got posted in cycling and tagged bike safety. So again, we could click on cycling and we'd come to all of the posts that we have about cycling. If we go back in the browser and I click on bike safety, we'd come to all of the posts that I had tagged bike safety. So that's kind of just a high level overview of how that works. So right now we've got some functionality in place. We're making pages, we're making posts, but let's look at how we restructure the way that our site is set up to make sure that we have our own homepage, and then look at how we can kind of start coming in here and customizing certain things like what shows up in the navigation, what shows up in the sidebar down here, and some of the CSS. So let's go back into the WordPress admin. So we've looked at posts and pages. Let's go to settings, reading. So from here, you can choose to either have your latest posts, what is shown up as on the home page, and you can choose to show the full text of each post or a summary of each post, or you can choose a static page to be your home page. And any page that that you have published will show up in this drop down of lists here. And we'll click My New Page, and then you also can pick which page you want to have be your post page, so that which page is going to be like your blog roll or something like that. So we'll pick my sample page, and then that will have all of the blog posts that I have on there. Now, having the full text of each blog post on that blog roll page might be kind of excessive, so I would encourage you to use summary if you're going to start blogging. And then if you want to, in the meantime, while you're working on the site, if you want to discourage search engines from indexing the site while it's kind of in progress, you can turn that on and you're less likely to show up in a Google search. So now that I've chosen my new page as the home page, I'm going to save the change. And I'm going to come back to the base URL for my site and refresh. And now you'll see that that page is now my home page. And if I go to sample page, that's where my list of posts exists now. Okay, so that's in the reading settings. Let's go to permalinks. So by default, if we were to look at this page, and you look at the URL here, we've got this question mark page ID equals 2. And that's the default setting. That's the kind of structure that we have set up here. But you can set it up to have a number of different formats. So you can have the date and the name of the post in your URL. You can just have the month, year, and the name of the post. You can just have the category and the ID of the post be in your URL, or you can just have the name of the post itself. It really doesn't matter. You can also, if you want to get into a little bit more advanced practice here, you can do your own structure. But what I would probably recommend is something in these middle 4 here. So I'm going to pick month and name. I'm going to save the changes there. Then we'll come back to this page, refresh. Now you'll notice that I have the name of the page here. It's sample page. It's no longer that weird question mark thingy. So we go to my new page. Since this is the home page, we just have that URL. So that's something you're probably going to want to look at changing as well. So let's move from here and we'll move to writing. So if you want, you can choose a default category for each post. If you want, you can choose a default post format for each post. You can kind of play around with that. And then inside here, we have the classic editor set up as the default for authoring posts and authoring pages. But you could also choose block editor, which is kind of the new paradigm within WordPress. I haven't learned how to use that just yet, which is why we're not covering it. But most new WordPress installations will be set up with a block editor out of the box. So for now, let's just stick with the classic editor. Okay, so that's writing settings. Couple more things here. You'll notice we have the site title is what is substituting the word like the home link at the moment. You can change that here. Like I could change this to Matt James Media. You don't have to have a WordPress site tagline rather. By default, it says just another WordPress site, but we could make this say I make websites or what have you. You can change the date format, you can change the time format, you can change the user default role, and we'll talk about that in just 1 second, and then you can set the administration email address here. So I just changed the title and the tagline. So now I'm going to save those changes, come back over to my site, refresh. Now you can see I've got those changes reflected. All right. So, okay. Okay. So the last thing that we'll talk about before we go into how we were going to customize this is this users feature. So if we go to all users, we'll see right now I only have myself here. But imagine you work on a website with a team of people. You're doing a news site and you're publishing, a bunch of different articles a day. Everybody has a different role to contribute. You can add new users in here who all will have a login, and you can give them different permissions. So if we're going to add someone new, you give them a username, user email, and their name, what website this is, and then there are these different roles. And these different roles have different levels of permissions, from just being able to publish content to being able to edit content to being able to edit the source files. So the general idea is that you give people the least amount of permissions that they need to get their job done, but you by default are set as an administrator. Okay, so now that we've covered kind of the basics of WordPress, let's look at how we can customize this a little bit. So first up, let's take a look at addressing the navigation structure. So let's go to menus. And here, this is kind of like my default menu. But I want to create a new one because I'm not wild about the way that this is acting. So I'm going to click Create Menu. We're going to give this a new name. I'm going to call this Main Navigation. And then you have a couple settings down here. So you can choose automatically add new top level pages to this menu, which is the behavior that we saw previously. I made a new page, WordPress added it to the menu. If you want to do that, that's great, but you can do it manually, and I think that's a little bit more manageable. And then the display location is where on the page is this going to show up. Is this going to be your main menu? Is it going to be in the footer? Is it going to be on the aside? That's kind of up to you. So I'm going to click primary because that's where I want it. And then we'll click Save Menu. So now that I have this, I don't really need to have my new page in there because that's taken care of by the home link. So I can just click that, open up this drop-down, and say Remove. So I'm going to save that menu. Now we go back to the site here, and you see it's gone. Maybe I want the categories that I have in that menu. Maybe I want a link to my cycling category. So I'll click Add to Menu, and there I have it. So I'll save that, come back to here, refresh. Now you see I have that cycling category in here. And it's as easy as toggling the checkbox next to your published pages or your categories, or you can do custom links if you wanted to put a link to like your Behance profile in here, you could do that here and add it to the menu. Or if there's specific posts that you want to link to, you can just select those, click Add to Menu, and they're in there. If you want to remove something, you click the drop down and click Remove. If you want to reorder something, you can just click on it and pull it in whatever order that you want. And then when you're done and you like it, click Save, go back, double check. Now we've got that reordering and all of the things that I just added, that post, this page, and my category. So that's how you customize menus. Let's look at how we customize the appearance. So from here, we'll go in our appearance menu to customize, and that's going to take us to this new interface. And it's going to have a lot of the things that we saw in the dashboard kind of all aggregated here in a way that makes it easy for you to kind of work on your site as you see that kind of refreshed. So most of what you're going to do is going to be in this additional CSS pane. Now, this is going to work just like any other CSS that we've done so far. Now you may remember that I gave this paragraph a class of body-p. So if I wanted to say body-p and then type color red, you'll see that get updated. So for the HTML that you author within your pages and posts, you have explicit control over what those elements and classes are, and then you have control over the selectors that you'll need to use. However, the theme itself comes with a number of HTML structure and classes already built in. So if you want to target things like the nav, for example, you need to use the classes that are already there. So the way that we find that is right-click, inspect element, and that's going to pull up the item or specifically the element that I clicked on. So in this case, it's an A tag within a class of main navigation. So if I wanted to target that specific thing, I could use this selector because that's the selector that is being used at the base level of the theme. So I'm going to click on that, copy it, and then come back over to my custom CSS. And then I'm going to just change this something here. Let's give it some margin or something like that. 1 rem. And now you can see that everything that has that selector gets spaced out. Let's say I want to change the background color of the site navigation. Now that just has a class of main navigation. So I'm going to copy that, come over here. I'll say background pink or whatever. And then I have that. So once you've kind of got some things in place that you like, you can hit publish, and then when you come back to your site, you'll see that those changes will persist. So there's a couple things that I want to bring up. This obviously is as bare bones of a styling as you could possibly have within a website, and that's by design. This theme is designed to give you all of the functionality of WordPress, but also make it so you have total control over the customization. So let's kind of look a little bit at some of this HTML structure here so you can see how you can kind of make this your own. So if I right click and I select inspect element, I can see that I have a header, and then directly inside that header I have a class of header inner. So let's make some changes there. So I'm going to give the header that background of pink, and not much will change here. Okay. I'm going to take that off the main navigation because it's kind of covered by the header, and then I'm going to give that class of header dash dash inner its own background of whatever, light blue, and then I'm going to restrict the width of it. So I'm going to say width 95%, max width 1080 pixels, margin 0 auto. So now I have an inner container that is flexible, that is contained within a full width header, and that gives me the ability to have a full width header and have the inner container be somewhat restricted so that I don't have like this crazy line length and things up against the edge of the browser window. So I'll take that light blue off just for the moment, and now you can kind of see how you have a little bit more flexibility over styling here. So let's just close up the nav for now, and we'll come down to content. So when you are writing your content, you are writing in this area here that says content area. So it's specifically within this article. So you'll see there's the header there, and that's where that site title is. That's where I wrote my new page. And then you'll see entry content here. So that's the actual part where I wrote the paragraph and added the image. Now, if I want to set this up in such a way that I have my main content area, which is this div with a class with an ID of primary and a class of content area, the main element and the article are nested within that. If I want to set this up so I have that content area kind of as in a sidebar with this aside here, I can set a width on this div. So we'll say, we'll kind of do the same thing that we did with the header inner here, so we can line up. So we'll say dot site content, and then we'll say display grid, grid template columns, repeat for 1 FR, gap 1 rem. Then we need to place this div with the class of content area. So we'll say dot content area, grid column start 1, grid column end 3 or 4, 3. And then back up here in site content, we'll just center this. We'll say margin 0 auto. Okay. I want this to end at line 4. There we go. Okay, so now I have the inner content of my header lined up with the edge of my kind of overall body content, and then down here at the bottom I've got my footer. So that's kind of like the basics of getting started with styling here in WordPress. Now I probably want all this grid stuff and a media query, so I'll copy that, and then let's just do this here. It's going to break for a second. And then we'll say at media min width 768 pixels, open and close curly brackets, site content. Get all this stuff out of here, put that in here, and then we'll place the content area inside that media query as well. So then if I were to use these mobile simulators down here, you can see that my layout updates itself based on whatever screen size I'm on. So that's kind of cool to test that too. Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to show you before wrapping this intro to using WordPress up is about widgets. You may have noticed that in the right column of our site here, we have a search bar, recent posts, recent comments, archives, categories, and meta. Likely you will not want all of those. And this doesn't have to be a sidebar. You can style it however you want. This can be like, it will remain in a side element, but it could be underneath the main content. Totally up to you. So if we go back into our dashboard, we're going to click that X. That's going to close that customize area. And we'll go to Appearance Widgets. In widgets, we have 4 widget areas set up within this theme. We have the sidebar, which we've seen so far. That's the aside element. And there are 3 widget areas within the footer. And widgets are places that you can just add extra little bits of functionality, like search, like a list of recent posts, etc. We have all of these different options over here. So you can add a new navigation menu. So if you wanted to have like a footer menu, you can add that there. Let's go ahead and do that actually. So I'm going to click in the footer sidebar 1, do add widget, and then we'll give it a title, browse the site, and then from here you'll have a list of the different menus that you've created. Now we've only created one so far, but you could create a footer menu using that same process that we did when we put the main navigation together, and then you could select it here. Since we only have the one, I'm going to click select main navigation. We'll save it. And I don't want recent comments, so I'm going to click that and drag it out. I don't want archives. I'm going to drag that out. I'm going to get rid of meta. And I want to keep search, and I want to keep recent posts. So from here, if I go back to my site and refresh, you'll see that there's my menu that I have. Same links that are up here in that main menu, because it is the same menu, it's just styled differently down in the footer. But you'll also see that I only have my search widget, only have my recent posts, and I only have my categories. I should mention you can also do just custom HTML in there. So if we were to select a place for this to go, I'll put that in the sidebar. It's down at the bottom. I'll just say some custom HTML. And then we'll say paragraph, custom HTML. Save it. Come back over to our site. And then there it is. This is just something that I wrote with straight up HTML. So you can put any HTML in there that you want. You could put an image tag, a video tag, an audio tag, an unordered list, SVG, whatever. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And that's widgets. So I did say that that was the last thing that we were going to look at, but real quick, let's look at this, getting this footer lined up. So as you can see, we haven't done anything with aligning the footer. It's still over at the edge of our browser window. So I'm going to right click and see what CSS I need to target to get at that. So you've got the footer here, and then we've got two elements directly in there. So we've got site info and we've got footer sidebar. So what we want to do is we want to set up the footer to also be max width 1080 pixels and width 95%. So that way it'll line up with this edge. So we're going to go back into customize. And let's look at what selector we need to use. So the class is site footer, additional CSS, and then basically, since I want it to have the exact same styles as the header dash inner class, I'm just going to chain onto that. So I'll say comma dot site dash footer, and then boom, we get that lined up. I'll hit publish, come back over to my site, and then we've got that style. So that's kind of the basics around WordPress. There's obviously a whole lot you can do with it. All of this is stylable through custom CSS. Once you get in the basics, check back here. There will be a video about how to use Jetpack and some of the benefits that it'll give you. It'll give you performance optimizations, image optimizations, and cool things like tiled galleries, light boxes, etc. It's really, if you're only going to have one plugin, I think that's the one to use. One last quick note. If we look at the pages interface, if we go to add new, in the text here you'll notice we don't have syntax highlighting, and that's kind of a bummer. So there is a plugin for it. So let's look up what that is. Editor syntax highlighting? Yeah, okay. So let's look up this plugin and install it. So we'll come over here to plugins, we'll go to add new. I'm going to leave page because I didn't do anything. And then I'm going to search the plugins. Let's see what this is called. HTML Editor Syntax Highlighter. So HTML Editor Syntax Highlighter. Hit enter. And then there it is. I'm going to install it. Activate it. And now when I go to add a new page, you'll notice I have some syntax highlighting. So that's nice because it'll show you if you made a mistake, like if you don't have a closed tag or something like that, but it just looks a little bit more like we're used to working with CodePen and VS Code. So that's the basics of WordPress. Look forward to seeing what you create.